Hey, Scott.
Yes.
For the test on Thursday, do you have like a study guide or anything for us to look at, or should we just go off the lectures?
Do I have a study guide? Kinda. We're actually going to be doing a little practice quiz today so that you guys get a sense of what's going to be on the exam. And I'll talk about this more once we have a couple more people in and I begin class officially. So
Cool. Sounds good. Thanks.
yeah. I guess we'll see how many we have. Okay, I guess we'll get started now. So thank you, Annie, for that perfect segue. So the first thing I wanted to talk about today is the exam on Thursday. So the exam will happen during class time. It'll start at 9:30 a.m. And there are going to be 3 types of questions that you'll have on that exam. True, false, pretty basic. Multiple choice, and then multiple answer. And so multiple choice is where there's just one correct answer. Multiple answer is where there's more than one correct answer. And the way that these questions are graded is that the true, false, and the multiple choice, you get 1 point for the correct answer, 0 points for incorrect answers. For the multiple answer, you get 1 point for every correct answer, but you get -1 point for every incorrect answer. So it's actually possible to get negative credit on a multiple answer question if you actually answer, if you pick all incorrect options. And that's done in order to discourage you from guessing. I used to have it so that it was just 1 point for every correct answer on those multiple answer, but then some people got smart enough to just pick all of the options for every one of those, and they always got full credit. So I decided that was not the best option. So that's why you get kind of a deduction if you guess incorrectly. So those are designed to make you be a little bit more certain about what your answer is that you're selecting. So those are the 3 types of questions. And today I actually have a practice quiz that we'll be doing in class that has those 3 types of questions so that you can get a feel for it and get a feel for the types of questions that you can expect on the exam. And we are going to be doing this using quizzes. I don't know if anyone here is familiar. It's Q-U-I-Z-I-Z-Z. And some of you may have used that before in other classes, but I will open up the site for that. And actually, let me share my page, share my screen here. All right. So I am going to So first we're going to have an introduction to quizzes just so that you can get a feel for it before we do the actual practice test. Let's shuffle those. Continue. All right, so if you go to joinmyquiz.com, everyone can see my screen, right? We're good? Okay, so if you go to joinmyquiz.com and then enter the code on the screen here, 687066, that will log you into the quiz. This is just a short 2-minute intro, and I'll walk you guys through this one so that you get a feel for it. And then the second one will be 25 minutes that you'll do at your own pace. And then we'll review that at the end once we're done.
And is this how we're going to be taking the test on Thursday?
No, not exactly. You'll be taking the test on Thursday on Canvas.
Okay.
But it will be, and it'll be self-paced and you won't be interacting with other students. But that exam on Thursday will be open book. So, you know, obviously it's like, I don't like to bother with the online proctoring software. So I prefer just make it open book. But that requires you to be organized about your study materials, right? Because you only have a certain amount of time to complete the exam. And if you're planning on just looking up every answer as they come up, you're not going to have enough time to finish. So, so I would recommend that you get organized and put together some kind of a cheat sheet, maybe with the most important information, or do some modified version of the PowerPoints. But basically everything we've covered in class is fair game for the exam on Thursday. So the assigned reading, the lectures, any of the videos that were shown in as part of the lectures, all of that material is fair game.
Questions are
So,
going to be on the exam.
sorry, say that again, Eduardo.
How many questions are going to be on the exam?
That is a good question. I might right now. I think I have 50 on there, but I'll probably add a few more because, you know, people who are prepared tend to finish with plenty of time remaining. So time should not be an issue. I think I might add about 10 more questions. So there might be 60 on the actual exam on Thursday. But again, you know, people who come in prepared, they're done in like half an hour. So you have plenty of time during the class time to finish it.
Do we have
Right.
class on Thursday or no?
I'm sorry, say that again, Kim.
Do we have class on Thursday or is it just the test and that's it?
It's just the test, but I would recommend I still want you to log into Zoom because I'll give you a few instructions at the beginning of the exam. And then I'll launch it in Canvas. And then once the exam launches, that's basically the end of the Zoom meeting. And then you guys can just finish the exam at your own pace. And that will be it for Thursday.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
Okay, great. All right, so it looks like we have, well, we have at least 15 people here logged in. Is there anyone who's having trouble getting logged into quizzes?
Yeah, I am. I don't see.
Okay, I'll give you one more minute to get that figured out.
Yeah.
All right, I think we will begin now. So again, I'm going to walk you guys through this one. This will be kind of a group quiz as practice. And then after this, we'll do a sort of a preparation for exam number 1 that will be self-paced. So you'll be doing it at your own pace on your own machine. All right, so let's get this. I'm going to get rid of my Zoom window here.
I think I got it.
Excellent. Okay. How do I start this now? Okay. was a start button last time. How do I start this exam? Center is here, not designed for small screens. Yeah. Oh, here we go. Now I have a start button. That's weird. If it's full screen, I don't get a start button. All right. So here we go. All right, landscape ecology classes are being held by a Zoom meeting for the spring 2021 semester. True or false? Pretty easy, right? All right, so this is great. This quizzes program is grading you not just in terms of getting the right answer, but also how quickly you get it. So it looks like Jackson was the fastest, so he is in first place. So now we'll continue on to the next question. Which of the following monikers did the professor for Land 444 use when he was dropping sick beats at dance parties before the pandemic? Whoops. All right, we got Troy in the lead now, followed by Casey and Annie. So DJ Pineapple was the correct answer. All right, next question. Which of the following state names begins with the letter C? Select all that apply. So obviously that was an easy question, but it was to give you a sense of that select all that apply, the multiple answer type of question.
For these, do we just let the timer run out, or is there a way to submit that? Because I didn't see it.
I believe that's a good question. I'm not seeing the same thing you guys are seeing. So can anyone else answer that? Is there a submit button?
There's a submit button on the bottom
Okay.
right.
Oh, I didn't see it. Yeah, I just clicked it and I just had to wait for the timer to run out.
Oh, got it. Okay. So yeah, so the timer on this one, because I'm leading it, it's the timer is going to stay on for everyone until that question is done.
Okay.
But when you're doing your own self-paced one, as soon as you submit, it'll move on to the next question.
All right. Yeah, that sounds good.
All right. So obviously correct answers are shown there. I forget what the first one was because it's covered by my quizzes thing, but California, Connecticut, and whatever the other one was. All right.
Scott, how could you forget
Question.
about Colorado?
Colorado, thank you. Exam 1 for Land 444 will be on Thursday, February 25th at 9:30 a.m. And of course, the correct answer is true. Troy is in first place with 3,560 points. What types of questions can you expect to see on exam 1 for Land 444? Select all that apply. All right, Troy maintaining his lead. And of course, the correct answers were true, false, multiple choice, and multiple answer. Next one. Which of the following statements is true regarding exam 1 for Land 444? right. Troy, Jackson, and Igo in top 3. All right, so everything that's been covered in the class so far is fair game, as I mentioned before this quiz. And that's it. So Troy is the winner. Yes, I do want to end the quiz.
Some extra cut.
Good job, Troy. So you don't have to take the exam on Thursday. You get an automatic 100.
Oh, that's so nice of you.
Yeah. No, you still have to take it.
I should change the exam form for this instead of on Canvas.
This is a lot more fun, isn't it? But this isn't as helpful for assessments because like the grading isn't integrated and Canvas makes it a lot easier for that. All right, so this actually shows like how everyone did on the questions and how many got it right. So it looks like the hardest question was question 3. Only 25% of people got that one right. What was question 3? Was which of the following state names begins with the letter C? That was the one.
It's because we all
Everyone
clicked on
felt-
Chicago.
Yep. I did that too.
Chicago.
I just
Chicago's
saw
not a
C and I
state.
clicked on Chicago. So
All right.
I'm sure that's what everybody did. They just clicked that the first letter and they're just like, yep, I'm trying to get the time.
I love to trick you guys whenever I can. All right, so everyone gets a sense of how that interface works. So now I'm going to close that. And we will start the actual practice exam. So this is going to be very similar to the types of questions that you will be getting on Thursday. All right, so this one is going to be self-timed. So you know, you're not going to be doing it along with your classmates. So as soon as you hit submit, you'll be moving on to the next question, and then we'll review them at the end. So go to joinmyquiz.com and enter code 028101. And once I have everyone signed in here, I will start the quiz, and then I'm just going to mute myself and you'll have 25 minutes to complete the quiz. And I just ask that you stay on Zoom once you're done with the quiz, because then we'll be reviewing the answers and moving on to the rest of today's presentation. All right, we have 16 logged in. Is there anybody who is not logged in? Okay, 17. Let me see if I look over here.
I'm not in it.
Okay. Give you another minute to get in there.
Are the questions still timed? It's just.
The questions are timed, but it'll let you, so you get bonus points for answering quickly. But I'd, you know, for this practice exam, I'd rather you just focus on getting the right answer. It'll let you go past the time that's allotted, but you won't get any bonus points if you answer after the timer runs out. For Thursday's exam, you'll just have the entire class period to answer all the questions. Individual questions won't have timers attached to them.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions before we get started? All right, well, I'm going to start this, and I will mute myself, and you'll have 25 minutes. So at the end of 25 minutes, I'll come back on, and then we'll review the answers. So here we go.
How many questions were there again?
This one is 40.
Okay.
I'll mute that music. All right, that's it. We are going to end the quiz there. End. All right, good job, Jackson, Annie, and Cam for the top 3 positions. Jackson was the overall winner, although for the greatest accuracy, it looks like it's a tie between Annie and Cam, who both had 72%. So, and then it goes down from there. So, considering that the top scores in the class were 72%, what does that tell you about Thursday's exam?
Study.
You're
Gotta
all gonna
study,
fail.
definitely. And whoops, where'd my screen go? Hold on one sec. There we go. Gotta study. What else? Anyone? I would say gotta get organized is really important. Oh, go ahead, Emma.
Yeah, organize better.
Yeah, definitely get organized better. The more you study and the better prepared you are, the easier it will be to answer questions, or at least know where to look to find the information that you need. So obviously, if you can answer questions without looking up the answers, then that's going to save you a lot of time, and it'll leave you more time to look up the answers for the ones that you're not so sure about. How about for strategy? What do you think about in terms of strategy regarding the types of questions that you'll have on Thursday's exam?
One thing we do, like since it's gonna be on Canvas, I usually just answer the multiple choice first, and then go back and answer the multiple answer responses after. So like get everything eliminated before that.
That sounds like a great strategy, except that you won't be able to go back. So that's the downside, is that once you answer a question, you're done, and then it moves on. So what I would recommend in that regard, though, is to probably think about spending more of your time on those multiple answer questions, since those ones you can actually get penalized for selecting wrong options. So I would make sure that those are the ones that you're sort of the most confident about in terms of looking up the answers, and try to save a little bit of time on the multiple choice and the true false questions. All right, so we can go back through now and review the questions. So let's review the questions. Oh, and I need to share my screen again. All right, so how is the taiga biome different from the tundra biome? And the correct answer was that evergreen trees grow in the taiga, but not in the tundra. What kind of trees grow in the tundra type biome?
No trees.
No
None.
trees, exactly. So there are no trees in the tundra. It's just small ground clinging types of plants in the tundra. All right, next one. If I can get my mouse on the screen here. The reintroduction of, and by the way, this might be, so when you guys took the exam or took this quiz, it shuffled the questions and it shuffled the order of the answers. So this might not be coming up in exactly the same order that you saw the questions. In fact, it's probably not. So just keep that in mind. All right, the reintroduction of wolves to Yellowstone National Park had a broad range of effects on local ecosystems that can best be characterized as which of the following? Landscape ecology, ecological collapse, species dispersal, a hell of a good party, or a trophic cascade. And of course, the correct answer was a trophic cascade. We watched 2 films about trophic cascades, right? The first one was on the wolves of Yellowstone. What was the second one about?
Is that the termites?
Sorry, say that again, Jackson.
Those like termite mound things? Is that what you're
Actually, that was not on Trophic Cascades. That was on patterns in the savannah.
Wasn't it about the beavers?
No. Beavers were included actually in that film, but it wasn't about the beavers. They weren't the star.
Was it the
Rolls.
Tasmanian devil?
Yes, I heard someone say Tasmanian devils. That's correct. So that was the second one that was about Trophic Cascades. And there was a question about that on this quiz. All right, next one. Which biome covers most of the landmass near Earth's equator, as shown in this diagram? And the options were tundra, desert, savanna, tropical rainforest, or marine. And the correct answer was tropical rainforest. Let's move on to the next one. Which type of biome has the greatest biodiversity? Freshwater, temperate forest, marine, rainforest, or savanna? Marine biome is the correct answer. The marine biome has the greatest biodiversity of any biome on Earth. And then what's got the second greatest on this list?
Rainforest.
Nope, not rainforest.
Oh no.
Freshwater?
Freshwater, yep. So the amount of water generally dictates the amount of biodiversity. So it starts with saltwater, marine is at the top, and then freshwater, and then rainforest, and then on this one at least, then it would be temperate forest would be next, and then savanna underneath that. So sort of understanding the relationship between biodiversity and the moisture level of the different biomes is something that you will be tested on Thursday. According to the short film we watched in class, which animal species was credited with reducing the severity of wildfires in an example of a trophic cascade? And so that's that second film that we watched, and that was the Tasmanian devils. Right, so in the first one, we saw how the wolves that were reintroduced to Yellowstone actually changed the course of the rivers. And in the second one, we saw Tasmanian devils reduce the intensity of wildfires. Oops. Biodiversity is the single most important factor in determining ecosystem resilience, true or false. The correct answer was true. Biodiversity is the single most important factor, and it's the best indicator of a healthy ecosystem. A biome is characterized by all of the following except. So it's characterized by temperature, precipitation, plant communities, and animal communities, but not by human population size. That is not a factor that's considered in terms of defining biomes. All right, which biome is highlighted in this image, right? So if you look at the image, I don't know if I can make this bigger, I can't, but you can see that the areas right up near the poles, around the edges of the land masses up near the poles is highlighted, and that is the tundra biome, right? So that is the coldest biome that we looked at. That's the one that does not have any trees. Is it a wet or a relatively wet or relatively dry biome?
Dry.
Yeah, relatively dry. It's even though a lot of those landscapes can be characterized by quite a bit of ice, there's very little that's in the form of water that can be used by plants and animals. So it's actually a relatively dry biome. All right, next one. A lot of biome questions here. Which biome is highlighted in this image? Right, so again, you have to be familiar with the different types of biomes and the parts of the world. All of these different biome diagrams were presented in the lecture that talked about biomes. And so you have probably the biggest indicator here is that all of Central Europe And the forests of Eastern North America are highlighted in there, and that is the temperate forest biome.
High school, what is the example of aquatic biome?
So aquatic biomes are divided into two biomes. So aquatic can be either freshwater or marine. So any kind of freshwater wetlands, for example, would be aquatic biomes. Ocean reefs are aquatic biomes. Anything that's basically submerged underwater is an aquatic biome.
Okay.
What is the definition of the term ecology? And the correct answer was the branch of biology dealing with the relations and interactions between organisms and their environment. That's just a straightforward knowing that definition. Next one, which of the following terms refers to organisms of the same species living in the same environment together, such as these elephants? And the correct answer was population. So what's the difference between a population and a community?
Community is more than one species.
Correct. So a community is a group of organisms that live together in the same environment, but that belong to multiple species. Population is single species. Which of the following are ecosystem services provided by wetlands? Select all that apply. In this case, all 5 answers were correct. Water filtration, flooding mitigation, habitat preservation, recreation, and nutrient cycling. And that's helping to point to the fact that wetlands are one of the most important types of ecosystems that we have in terms of the services that they provide, and therefore are areas that need to be protected.
Hey, Scott.
Yep.
So for not like if we did not choose like I didn't pick recreation, did we lose points on that or no?
No. So on the the way the quizzes grades things is not exactly the same as the way that Canvas is going to grade them, but on the actual exam, anything that you don't pick will just get 0 points.
Okay.
The correct answer you pick will get +1 point. Any incorrect answer you pick will get -1 point.
Yeah, because I saw like on the top corner it says accuracy was 10%. I'm assuming that's
yeah. That 10% is the number of people who got the entire question right. So that's the number of people. That's the percentage of students who picked all 5 answers.
Okay.
So that's what that accuracy is showing.
And I guess too, Scott, with that, like following up, because like with recreation, because I think we talk a lot about like protecting wetlands and not going into them. So I guess what's a good example of recreation in a wetland?
Like a hiking trail, educational gardens, anything, or, people go hunting in wetlands for like ducks and things like that. So, and ecosystem services are about the ways in which ecosystems provide benefits to humans. So it's very human-centered, the idea of ecosystem services. So recreation is included in that because we do recreate in wetlands, and we do sort of fun things or relaxing things that involve wetlands. Bacteria decomposing waste is an example of what type of ecosystem service? And in this case, the correct answer was regulating, right? Because it's sort of one of those background types of processes that helps keep the environment from becoming overburdened with dead plant life and animals and so forth. And so that is an example of a regulating ecosystem service. And if you go back to the lecture on ecosystem services, it defines the types of ecosystem services, and then what examples of what's included under each of those types. What is the definition of an ecological community? So again, this goes back to that It's kind of related to that population question. And in this case, it's a group or association of populations. So multiple populations, meaning multiple species, of two or more different species occupying the same geographical area at the same time. So all of the plants living in the same wetland comprise a plant community for that particular wetland. Which of the following biomes can be found in tropical regions? Select all that apply. So in this case, there were 3 correct answers. You can have marine biomes in tropical regions, right? There are oceans in tropical regions. There are savannas in tropical regions, and there are rainforests in tropical regions, right? What is the temperate version of a savanna?
A prairie?
Yep, a prairie or a grassland. So prairies, grasslands, savannas, they're all related to each other. The difference is the sort of temperature regime in which they exist. So prairies and grasslands are in temperate regions, and then savannas are in tropical regions. All right, next question. What scale of ecological research, and by the way, let me go back to that previous one just to give another sort of basic definition. So when we're talking about tropical regions, what part of the Earth are we referring to?
Near the equator.
Near the equator. And in fact, the actual definition is 20 degrees north and 20 degrees south of the equator. When we talk about polar regions, what are we referring to?
Near the poles.
Near the poles, yeah, near the North and South Pole. And again, the definition is within 20 degrees of either the North or South Pole. And then everything else in between the polar regions and the temperate regions, is, between polar and tropical regions is known as temperate. So basically a polar, temperate, and tropical. So if you have questions referring to those, it's just in terms of what latitude, what sort of slice of latitude of the Earth that environment is in. All right, next question. What scale of ecological research is concerned with patterns and interactions among different ecosystems across a geographic region, right? So we talked about the different scales of ecology, from organismal to population to community to ecosystem, all the way up to the top, which is what we're studying in this class, of course, which is landscape ecology. So that is the correct answer, looking at patterns and interactions among different ecosystems across a geographic region. Dispersal refers to the process of distribution of individuals within geographic population boundaries. Correct answer was true. Dispersal just means movement, right? So it's just the movement of a particular species within its range. Island biogeography theory is of interest in landscape ecology because it is thought to be an appropriate analogy for which type of landscape element, and the correct answer there was patch. Patches of landscape, so whether it's a patch of forest or a patch of grassland that's in a matrix of some other contrasting type of environment, are seen essentially as islands and are experienced essentially as islands to the organisms that live in that particular patch. Which of the following are examples of disturbance regimes? Select all that apply. So who can define a disturbance regime?
It's basically like a disaster that wipes out a good amount of the biodiversity, and it resets the successional stage.
Yep, that is a good definition. Another way to think about it is that it's a relatively sudden and fast and extreme change in the environment, right? So any kind of event that happens relatively quickly and has a big impact on the environment is going to be considered a disturbance regime. So wildfire is an example, a severe drought is an example, a beaver dam is an example, right?
Why would a winter snowfall not fall in that category?
Because that's just it's not having a devastating or a major impact on that environment, right? Like that winter snowfall, that's something that happens on a regular basis all throughout the winter, every winter. So it's not something that's kind of resetting the ecosystem and having a major impact on it. The ecosystem remains intact.
That slow like erosion and like freeze and thaw kind of doesn't fall within
No.
Okay.
Yeah, because those kinds of things happen on a regular basis throughout the winter.
Yeah.
Typically, disturbance regimes are things that happen infrequently and have a major impact on that ecosystem.
Okay.
So thunderstorm, just a typical thunderstorm rolling through is not an example. However, if that thunderstorm had tornadoes embedded in it, then that would be an example of a disturbance regime. Patterns in the landscape are almost always the result of human intervention, true or false? And the correct answer was false, because there are lots of examples of patterns in the landscape that are the result of natural processes. Which of the following are included in the list of basic patterns found in nature according to Peter Stevens? So that was the author who identified these sort of natural types of patterns that we talked about in, I think it was the second lecture, and select all that apply. So in this case, the correct answers were spirals, meanders, branches, and explosions. Convergence was not one of the types of patterns, although you could think of a convergence as being the inverse of a branching pattern, but they're basically the same thing. Which term best describes the spatial pattern depicted by the river system in this image? And the correct answer was branching, right? So some of you chose meander, and I can see why you would choose meander, because some of the individual streams, right, within that are meanders. Some of the individual branches are meanders, but the overall pattern of the entire system is one of a branching pattern.
What's the biggest difference between meander and branching?
So the biggest difference is that typically when you're dealing with a meander, it's a single path through that entire landscape or through that entire series of points, let's say, whereas the branching is kind of one source that branches out into multiple different areas.
Okay.
Right, so if this was one stream that we saw going back and forth across that landscape, that would be a meander. Disturbance regimes are a natural and recurring aspect of many natural environments. True or false? The correct answer is true. They don't necessarily recur on a regular pattern like every winter, for example, or every 5 years, but they are a recurring pattern. So wildfires are a good example, right? So a lot of our Western forests are adapted to periodic wildfires, and there are certain species that won't even germinate until there's a wildfire that helps to break down the seed coat so that those species can germinate in the soil left behind by the wildfire. Which of the following best characterizes the typical impact of human land use patterns? And in this case, you needed to understand the definitions of compositional and configurational heterogeneity. And so typically the result of human land use patterns is that you have decreased compositional heterogeneity, meaning fewer different types of land uses, and less configurational heterogeneity, right? Because people tend to break things up into grids or regular patterns, and you don't get as many sort of randomized types of patterns and different types of conditions like you do with natural systems. Another question about heterogeneity. Which diagram represents a landscape with high configurational heterogeneity but low compositional heterogeneity, right? So compositional is how many different types of landscapes there are, and configurational is the how many different shapes of environments there are. And so high configurational means that you want a lot of different shapes, but low compositional means that you don't want a lot of different types of environments. In this case, the correct answer was C, right? Because you have lots of different types of shapes, but only 2 different types of environments in that diagram. Which of the following historical figures was credited with expanding Americans' concepts of landscape and the importance of conservation with his paintings of majestic Western vistas? And this is just a basic question about knowing your historical figures. In this case, it was Albert Bierstadt. That's an example of one of his paintings, and it really popularized the idea of these Western landscapes that need to be protected. John Wesley Powell was a key figure in which of the following? Select all that apply. And in this case, the correct answers were mapping of the Colorado River Basin, founding of the National Geographic Society, leadership of the U.S. Geological Survey, and proposal to divide up Western states based on watersheds, right? Establishment of California as a state was not one of the things he was known for, but he was known for lots of things. So in general, when it comes to John Wesley Powell, more of the answers are going to be right than not. The term landscape ecology was first used by whom? Correct answer is Carl Troll. Again, that's just knowing your historical figures. From a landscape ecology point of view, the hedgerows in this photo can be characterized as which of the following? And so you need to know what a hedgerow is, and then you need to know your different types of elements that are found in landscape ecology. So in this case, the hedgerows are basically these rows of hedges, as the name implies, between these agricultural fields, and those operate as corridors within the landscape. They're ways of connecting together different patches of ecosystem. Which of the following best describes photogrammetry? So photogrammetry was when you just use photos to create 3D models of an environment. And that's an important aspect of remote sensing and collecting remote data about different portions of the Earth. So by the way, I'll just go back to that question for a second. What is the difference between photogrammetry and LiDAR? You can use both of them to create 3D models of the Earth. How are they different?
Photogrammetry is from pictures from a different point of view, and LiDAR is, well, like radar. Basically,
yeah. So LiDAR is bouncing beams of light back and forth off the surface of the Earth as you fly over top of it. And so it's using the time it takes for that light to bounce back in order to tell you the elevation of different elements on the ground, whereas photogrammetry is creating that 3D model using just photos. Which of the following technologies would be most appropriate for mapping individual species of plants in a wetland area? So individual species. So if you remember, we talked about how you can break light up into different numbers of bands. And the more bands you have, the greater the amount of specificity you can get in terms of the different landscape types that are there. So when you're trying to get into individual species of plants, then you're talking about hyperspectral imagery, right? So how many bands of light are we talking about when we talk about hyperspectral imagery? Anyone? Is it tens of bands of light? Dozens? It's actually thousands, hundreds or thousands. Actually, it's thousands. Ultra spectral is hundreds, and then hyperspectral is thousands. So you have thousands of bands of light. According to the film we watched in class, which of the following is a determining factor in the landscape patterns evident in the African savanna? This was the film that Jackson alluded to a little bit earlier in the class, and this was the one looking at the patterns of termite mounds in the African savanna. And that's an example of a landscape pattern created by a natural phenomenon as opposed to human activities. Which of the following are key features of biodiversity? Select all that apply. So there were 3 of them. If you remember, there was that short film. It was kind of an animated short film that we watched about biodiversity, and the 3 types of, the 3 key features are ecosystem diversity, genetic diversity, and species diversity. You need all 3 of those in order to have high biodiversity overall. Which of the following are true of edges in landscape ecology? Select all that apply. So in this case, all 5 answers were correct. So it is the outer portion of a patch. They support different species than the interiors of patches. They are transition zones from one ecosystem or habitat to the next. Human-made edges tend to be more geometrically regular than natural edges. And they can be created by both natural processes and human activities. So all 5 of those were correct statements about edges. Which of the following is the most common effect that human development has on landscape patterns in natural environments? And the correct answer out of these options was fragmentation. Who can give me a definition of fragmentation?
Oh, like breaking up the forest and stuff like that, just splitting things.
Exactly. So it's basically taking one large ecosystem or habitat type and breaking it up into lots of small patches of that particular ecosystem as a result of development that happens in between and leaves over little remnant pieces of that habitat. Which of the following are categories of provisioning services provided by ecosystems? Right, so if you remember, the definition of provisioning services are ecosystem services that provide actual physical usable products that humans use. So examples of that were food, fuel, fiber, and pharmaceuticals. You can think of those as the 4 Fs, even though pharmaceuticals is PH, but it sounds like an F. Photosynthesis is not. What is photosynthesis an example of?
Supporting.
Supporting, correct. Because that is something that we don't get a direct benefit from, but it is an essential process that supports the other ecosystem services. Which of the following are data types used in a geographic information system, GIS? Select all that apply. And this is just knowing that there are 3 types of data that we use in GIS. There's image or raster data, map or vector data, and attribute or tabular data. There's no such thing known as pixelated or blended data. Ian McHarg, considered the father of GIS, was a professor of which of the following at the University of Pennsylvania? He was a landscape architect, so landscape architecture was the correct answer. The first widely used US government GIS system, known as the Map Overlay and Statistical System, or MOS, was developed at the US Fish and Wildlife Service office in which city? The correct answer was Fort Collins. That was just kind of a little bit of cool local trivia. But Fort Collins is the correct answer. So it's Fort Collins is in many ways one of the sort of generational points of the spread of GIS in the United States. This digital photo of the Chicago skyline is an example of what type of computer graphic. In this case, the correct answer was a raster graphic. So how would you define a raster graphic? Anyone? I will call on someone. Let's go with.
Oh,
okay. We have a volunteer.
Pixels and cells.
Yeah.
Correct. So it's a grid
It's
of
not
pixels.
available.
So yes, it's a grid of pixels is a raster graphic. And that was it for that quiz. So that gives you a sense of the types of questions that you'll, in fact, a few of these actual questions that were on this practice test will be on the actual exam on Thursday. So again, I recommend that you study, get organized, make sure that you have all of the PDFs of the presentations downloaded so that if you need to refer to them or find something quickly, you can do that without having to navigate websites. And I would recommend putting together a little cheat sheet that kind of has some of the big topics that we talked about, some of the subtopics underneath that, so that you have A, because it's a good way to study just by putting together that information, and B, it'll help you stay organized and know where to look to find the information that you need to answer questions. So that's it for today, because we're actually over time. So are there any other questions about Thursday's exam? All good. All right. So happy studying, and I will see you guys on Thursday at 9:30 a.m. sharp. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.